Hello, my name's Roxanne. This 3-part documentary will give you basic knowledge about the LGBT plus community. It is important to be educated about the LGBT plus community for many reasons: for being respectful and tolerant, for making informed opinions, learning to be an ally by listening to this diverse group of people, and fighting for rights, and maybe to learn a little bit more about yourself. Before we delve further into learning about amazing people, there will be some disclaimers. Number 1. Not all identities and orientations will be covered in this documentary. It would be really awesome to talk about all of them, but the truth is, this is really just an introduction to an infinite amount of information. And that doesn't mean those identities and orientations that we don't cover are not valid. Number 2. Information in this documentary may become outdated and incorrect. Time passes, mistakes happen. Also, because everyone's experience and identities are unique, identities and orientations portrayed in this documentary may be different than what you thought. Some people have a combination of sex characteristics that is not typical for female or male. People who are born with these sex characteristics have intersex or difference of sex development, DSD traits. Nature is not binary when it comes to biological sex, and neither are humans. Not all people have XX or XY chromosomes. Some people have only one, like a single X in their set instead of a pair. This chromosome is called a sex monosomy. Some people are born with 3 or more chromosomes in their set, which is called a sex polysomy. There can be XXX, XXY, XYY, or more chromosomes, such as a sex chromosomal mosaic, like 46XXXY. Sex polysomy chromosomes have different effects on people. Some people are infertile, some are very tall, some have smaller external genitalia or less secondary sex characteristics, and sometimes it goes unnoticed. People with sex monosomies can have normal lives and may be shorter than average height and are at risk for congenital heart conditions. In some people with intersex/DSD traits, gonads can be a combination of ovarian and testicular tissues. These gonads are known as ovotestes. Although both tissue lines are present, usually only one is functional. A person with ovotestes does not produce both gamete lines, they either produce eggs or sperm. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH, is an intersex condition where the production of cortisone in the endocrine system is different. Because of this hormone change, CAH can cause a larger clitoris or a labia that looks like a scrotum. CAH can also happen in males, although it is much less noticeable. There are also urinary tract variations such as hypospadias, where the urethral opening is not at the tip of the penis. Some people with hypospadias can have their urethra on the underside of their penis, at the intersection of the penis and the scrotum, or the urethra might be completely open with a short penis. This condition is fairly common. Androgen insensitivity syndrome, or AIS. It should be noted that many intersex people are not fond of the word syndrome, as it suggests something is wrong with their body, when the majority of the time their body is perfectly functioning. It's when a person's body does not respond to androgens. A person with AIS has XY chromosomes, testes, female, phenotypical, or external appearance at birth. The testes produce a lot of testosterone, which the testosterone receptors on the cells in the body defectively cannot process. The body converts the majority of the testosterone into estrogen, which can be processed. Male and female assigned people with AIS who did not have their gonads removed in childhood age have been able to have children with the medical procedure IVF. Unfortunately, most individuals who are female assigned at birth are being sterilized under the false pretense that their internal testicular gonads would develop cancer. This is Emily. She is an intersex activist who has AIS. Klinefelter syndrome is when a person has XXY chromosomes. XXY males have less testosterone, which causes some breast development, less body hair, and smaller testes. They are sometimes also taller than the average male. The man on the right is David. He has XXY. He is an LGBT plus activist from San Francisco. There are lots of conditions we haven't talked about. This is Emily. She is 25 years old and uses she, her, or they, them pronouns. Here they explain intersex.
Basically it means people who are not biologically male or biologically female.
She says that's how biology and medicine recognize it.
A big part of what being the intersex intersex experience is the medicalization of intersex condition.
Emily is intersex.
I have a condition called Swyer syndrome. I have XY chromosomes, but I was born looking typically female.
They have a uterus and typical female genitalia.
But I don't have fallopian tubes, and instead of ovaries, I was born with protogonads, which are a structure in fetuses that becomes testes in males and ovaries in females. In my case, they didn't become anything, and they could have become cancers.
The protogonads were removed, and because she doesn't have ovaries, she has to take hormones. In terms of adversity,
One thing I have noticed is that when I was looking for housing, I would go on a housing board for grad students and message people who said they were looking for roommates. And I had this little blurb about what I'm like as a roommate and my hobbies, and I of course mentioned that I'm intersex and non-binary just so people would know.
when she felt this information was important, she also didn't make a big deal about it.
A lot of people who I reached out to about that, who had been looking for roommates, suddenly were not looking for roommates anymore.
They don't have evidence of it, but
It seems, possible.
they did eventually find LGBT plus friendly housing. Here she goes on to explain issues the intersex community faces.
The biggest thing that you'll hear a lot is intersex normalization surgeries, I should say normalization. That's something that still happens, and it's very difficult to know exactly how often it happens because there haven't been very good studies about it. And that's just really frustrating. I actually have one of the rare intersex conditions where surgery really did make sense because my protogonads were doing nothing for me and could have become cancerous. But there are a lot of intersex conditions where people could be perfectly healthy well into adulthood without any surgical intervention, but just to make the children look more normal and to make their parents more comfortable, doctors recommend surgeries that have all the risks of surgical scarring, loss of sensation, infection, even just the risk of putting a child under anesthesia. That alone is a risk that isn't warranted by the actual medical concerns that are present. And having these surgeries as a child makes them, if someone does want a surgery as an adult, makes those surgeries less successful later on. So that's a huge thing. But there is, of course, a lot of adversity faced by the intersex community. I'd say another big thing is that most doctors focusing on intersex issues are pediatricians. It can be really difficult for intersex patients to find doctors who understand their concerns when they're adults. Intersex people often have trouble dating. Intersex people have a little bit of friction with the queer community, although it's obviously a very welcoming community. There's a little bit of controversy over to what extent intersex people want to be included in that and to what extent they should be included.
Here's advice they would give to a person who just found out they are intersex.
This is really tough advice to follow. I'm realizing this as I think about it. So being intersex, I think really a good thing is to take it slow. The sources of information that you have available to you when you first find out that you're intersex are great, but they're one kind of source. So trying to calm yourself down a little bit and reaching out to other people who have different experiences, who can share with you about what being intersex means to them, what their experience has been. I don't know this from personal experience, but a lot of people who found out that they were intersex later in life, they find out about it and they think it's something wrong with them that they want to fix right away. And I think that letting it sit long enough that you realize that you're still the same person would help a lot. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to want to pursue, surgical interventions or hormonal interventions. Like, you may absolutely want to do that, but you want to give yourself enough time that you know that you're not rushing into it. I would say starting at the AIS DSD support group website is a great way to start, and you can just Google that. But also, of course, you can look on Tumblr, you can look on Facebook. There are all kinds of intersex support groups for people who just found out, for people who didn't, for people who are straight and cis and intersex, and people who are queer and intersex. Like, there are so many different communities of intersex people, and they're all great.
A person who is transgender does not identify as the gender that is on their birth certificate. For example, a baby is born, the doctor looks at the baby's genitals, and decides the baby will be raised as a boy. The baby grows up and at one point realizes they are a woman. This person is transgender, specifically MTF, or male to female. Vice versa is female to male, or FTM. A person who is non-binary does not identify as female or male. We will explain this more later. If your doctor looked at your genitals and labeled you as female or male, and you were raised that way, and you feel like your gender is the same as the gender on your birth certificate, then you are cisgender, or cis for short. If you aren't transgender, you are cisgender. Gender is how a person perceives themselves. I asked people online what they felt their gender means to them. My name is Mariana. I am a woman. To me, being a woman means that I am strong and independent, and I am capable of giving life, love, and kindness to the world. I am Kate. I am a woman, and to me, being a woman means inheriting a long history of resistance, resilience, and revolution. My name is Lucy. I am a cis female, and to me, being female means nothing. I don't feel like my gender has any effect on how I act or dress. My gender isn't my identity. I know I'm a girl, and I'm happy with that. But if someone called me a guy, deliberately or not, it wouldn't make a difference because I don't see my gender being significant enough part of my personality that it would be any different if I were a boy. I am Reese. I am non-binary, and to me, being non-binary means that I get to be my authentic self and not pretend to be someone I'm not. It also means I get to break the binary because not everyone fits in the male or female category. My name is Jake, and I identify as male, and to me, being male means being comfortable in my own skin, having a strong sense of self, and being able to live my life authentically and free. It means not having to pretend to be someone who I'm not, and I can live my truth now. My name is Ben. I'm a man, and to me, being a man means that I support people however I can, and I'm a leader when people need someone to step up. Think about your gender and what it means to you. For people who are non-binary, their gender is neither woman nor man. That may be very surprising and even upsetting considering how our society only recognizes female and male, and the majority of people have grown up with no other knowledge of other genders. Think about it this way. If some people's bodies are not female or male, then some people will identify as not female or male. Even if a person is not intersex, they can still identify as non-binary. Just as some people who are assigned male at birth identify as female, and some people who are assigned female at birth identify as male. Again, this may be surprising information. After all, everyone is taught that there are only female and male genders, right? Actually, many cultures acknowledge non-binary people, although they have different words for non-binary that resonate with their culture. The word non-binary is a very new word compared to other words that mean basically the same thing in other languages. The Warmi people from Peru during the era of the Incas were androgynous shamans that performed rituals to honor the two-gendered god, Chuki Chinche. Nadalei and Dilba from the Navajo tribe in southwestern United States describes a third gender in which a person embodies both genders. Bisu and Boogie culture in Indonesia reflects a person who has multiple genders or no gender. They are frequently associated as priests. I'm sorry if I got any of those words pronounced wrong. If you're still feeling confused, that's okay. If you don't like the idea of non-binary, that's also okay. The thing that does matter is that even if you are confused or have decided to not accept the idea of non-binary, you can still be respectful towards non-binary people. After all, they are human, just like you, and they want to be treated with respect just like you would. Just like you would like to be listened to, non-binary people also want to be listened to. When someone is sharing their story, and you don't agree with them, you shouldn't just say that they are wrong. Their story is their truth, it is what they believe, and to them it is not wrong, just like your story is your truth, and your experiences are not wrong. If the moment feels right, you can ask if they would like to engage in a friendly debate. Keep in mind that there are a lot of moments where a debate wouldn't be appropriate, such as if you or the person you are talking to is feeling very tense or very vulnerable. Here is some of the science behind transgender people from the book, This Book is Gay. For many decades, it was thought that being trans was a result of environmental or parental factors. However, the high-profile case of David Reimer, 1965 to 2004, changed things somewhat. Born as a boy and called Bruce, Reimer was accidentally castrated in a botched circumcision and raised as a girl. However, David always identified as male, suggesting gender cannot be learned. Our identity is born with us. Scientists have found variations in brain structure in both male to female and female to male transsexuals. In both cases, the test subjects have the typical brain patterns of their gender identity. I looked up more information about this online and found that transgender people had the brain patterns of their gender identity they identified with before and after they transitioned with hormones. Being transgender is not a choice. Something that many transgender people experience is dysphoria. Body dysphoria is when a person feels uncomfortable because their body does not match their gender identity. Social dysphoria is when a person feels uncomfortable because other people don't see them as the gender they are. Some transgender people don't have dysphoria. For a lot of transgender people, their dysphoria is painful and they need to transition in order to feel more comfortable. For some trans people, their dysphoria is so bad that they become extremely depressed and can't leave their house. It is very important for transgender people to be respected as the gender they are. You can be respectful to them by using the pronouns and name they use. Refusing to use the correct name and pronouns makes a lot of transgender people feel very dysphoric, and it is very rude. Many non-binary people don't use the pronouns she, her, or he, him. Some of them use pronouns such as they, them. Many people who are not non-binary struggle with these pronouns because they think the pronouns they, them are only used for groups of people and cannot be used as a singular pronoun, but this is not true.
There's a common misconception that they is used exclusively to refer to plural nouns and cannot be used in a grammatically correct singular sense. This is untrue. So untrue, in fact, that the American Dialect Society, a 127-year-old well-established organization, named they its 2015 Word of the Year. I love you. It wasn't any old usage of they that was being honored, though. It was specifically the singular gender-neutral version of the word. As in, I have a stellar friend named Kaden. They are cool and currently questioning their gender. They rock! The tribute to this pronoun was truly a momentous occasion. Because hey, if over 300 grammarians and linguists testify that they is a valid gender-neutral singular pronoun option, who can really argue? If that's not enough for you, though, did you know that the usage of singular they dates back to the 14th century? It can be found in the works of many of the greats, including Dickens, Dickinson, Shaw, Austen, Byron, Thackeray, Chaucer, Eliot Swift, the Bible. Like, God. I know God didn't write the Bible, but like, she could have. Fitzgerald, Wells, Defoe, Whitman, Carroll, Lewis, Wilde, Kipling, and Shakespeare.
Even while the pronouns they, them can totally be used as a singular pronoun, it may still seem very awkward when you are saying those pronouns for the first time. If you have a friend who uses different pronouns and you have a hard time remembering their pronouns, then you can practice on your own. For example, practice introducing them. This is Ash. They use they, them pronouns. They really love playing basketball in their free time. There was this one time when we were playing together and they beat me by 10 points. They're super athletic. You can also practice if one of your friends is transitioning he to she or her to him. If you meet someone and you are not sure what pronouns they use, it is totally appropriate to politely ask what pronouns they use. Just say, "Excuse me, I was wondering what pronouns you would like me to use for you." If you are at any event or space that is primarily centered around the LGBT+ community, such as Pride or an LGBT+ center, it is a good idea to use they, them pronouns for everyone until you know what pronouns the person uses, as there is a much higher likelihood that people in these places will use pronouns that are not expected for their appearance. It should be noted that you can't know someone's pronouns by how they look. You can only know if you ask. If you do not understand the concept of non-binary and are interested in learning more about non-binary gender, you can research it on the internet. Know that everyone has their own idea of non-binary, and a lot of people don't agree with each other on this controversial topic. Try to listen and keep an open mind. If you are interested in learning about the idea of non-binary gender in a more formal academic way, research queer theory, specifically relating to gender. Gender expression is how someone expresses themselves and can include gender clothing, hairstyles, cologne/perfume, makeup, names, and pronouns. Some people express themselves in a way that is feminine, masculine, or androgynous. A very important thing to note is that biological sex, gender, and gender expression are three independent concepts, and while for many people they do all match, for some people they don't. For example, there are people who are biologically male, whose gender is male, and have a feminine gender expression. There are people who are biologically female, gender is male and express themselves androgynously.
My name is Cecil. I am 17. I use pronouns he or they. It doesn't matter which. Basically, non-binary flux is kind of like a fluctuation between being non-binary and being a transgender male in my case. I never thought I belonged to the world of girls. They had a world of their own that I never belonged to, and I felt pretty comfortable with the guys, but not all the time. It was a weird feeling how I was kind of like fluctuating and could be absolutely fine. And then I don't know, nothing will feel dysphoria, and I'm just like, what's happening? It was kind of like a progression. Sometimes I felt uncomfortable being called like a boy, and I didn't know why. It was a weird feeling, and for a while I thought maybe I'm like gender fluid, but I don't like. I don't feel like a girl, so that doesn't fit. And I kept on looking and looking and looking until I finally came upon the term non-binary flux, which explained perfectly how I felt. It led to a period of accepting myself. Some of the misconceptions about these labels is that I'm a special snowflake, that I did this just for attention and I'm just confused, that gender is something that is static and it doesn't move at all. It's kind of angry how someone can come and say, nope, that's not how things work, and I'm just thinking, well, that's how I feel, that's how I feel most comfortable, that's how people know me, like I'm literally not hurting anyone this way. And someone calling me a special snowflake, I just think about I didn't really ask for this. It is really complicated, and it will be in some ways easier to just deny myself and say, yeah, I'm just one label or another, or I am cis hetero, but it just doesn't feel right. Some of those troubles are mainly with my family and from school, because at some point it was totally not talked about in my home. And once my dad found out my dad and my mom are separated, he started sending her various messages that were really unfriendly. Even my mom thought at some point that we should get a restriction order in school. I started giving out like talks about what the LGBT community was and how it came in various forms and shapes, and kind of like for people's understanding, and some of them didn't take it well. I was in quite a close-minded school, so they used to say that I was really weird behind my back and laugh, and they used to yell at me, especially the guys in the hallway. They used to yell slurs, and sometimes I got a like small plastic thing in which they put sandwiches, and they filled it up with dirt and grass, and they threw it at my face, and I kind of had to move schools because of that. There are several times when I feel I cannot share my identity because it's really complicated to explain something that many people have never heard of. Even in and out of the community, it gets tiring sometimes having to repeat over and over and over and over how you want to be addressed or how this thing works. Sometimes, like at school or with friends and family, which had like never heard of anything like this before, they just ask, well, how does that work? Because you like guys but girls, like if you marry a girl, then what will happen? And I'm just like, no, it will be a relationship.
Exactly.
When people like about my gender, they tell me, then how are you gonna transition? Are you gonna transition in which way? And start making very personal questions. Normally I just say that it's my thing, my personal stuff, and I am still me no matter what. What I would say is that internet is your best friend. It's kind of like a really big library. It has, especially if you look up for a while, you can find like a list of a ton of terms and amazing videos who have explaining various identities, and also can be your worst enemy.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to come out?
Okay. I will say planning. I know it's really hard, but don't give in to impulses. Especially do never you never come out on a car because you're trapped and no one is there to hear you scream. Just kidding. Be prepared to be asked a lot of questions. Choose a time in which you can just sit down and talk. And try to be as patient as you can. Even if they ask really uncomfortable questions, try to explain why they're not really nice to say or why you feel uncomfortable, and try to go slowly, step by step with them. But I will hope that someday people can just dress however they want, be however they want, and people just kind of accepting it becoming part of everyday life, that it's not a big thing anymore, that people wouldn't have to be afraid and to live in closets for years, and that people wouldn't try to get at each other's neck for something as personal and simple as how someone feels about themselves or about other persons.
Hi, my name is A.T. Faruya. I am the Transgender Youth Services Navigator at the San Diego LGBT Community Center. My pronouns that I use are they, them, theirs, and I also work at the Hillcrest Youth Center. For me, non-binary is I don't identify as male or female. I actually identify more as agender. Even if my expression is like quote-unquote more masculine or more feminine or in between, my internal my gender identity is that I don't have a gender. Dysphoria is similarly that might have different meanings for different people, and as far as coping with dysphoria, that also might look different for everybody. For me, dealing with dysphoria, specifically around my chest, I had severe dysphoria where I couldn't connect with my body. I was upset about it. And it got in the way of a lot of my daily activities. Anxiety around knowing my cycle was going to happen and how I was going to deal with it, which I think sounded to me a lot different than what my friends were going through. For them, it was like, oh, I'm just uncomfortable, or I don't like wearing a bra. For me, it was a very different feeling. It was a dissociation. I went to great lengths to wear not just a binder, but to in a very unhealthy way bind my chest down, having to move my body around in society, being consciously aware of this all the time. I was fortunate and privileged enough to have surgery, to have that removed, and I'm privileged and fortunate enough to go on hormones where that's blocked, so I don't have my cycle anymore. Nothing irritates me more than when people ask, what is your preferred name? When I tell people my name's A.T., that's my name. Because I don't go to cisgender people and say, what are your preferred pronouns? They'll be like, that's as opposed to what? I'm only going to use the pronouns that they use. Not I don't have a choice in that, right? So if someone were to say, I use she, her pronouns, I'm not going to go, oh, that's your preference. I'm going to go ahead and use he, him, his. That's awful. So we wouldn't do that to cisgender people. Why would we do that to trans folks? When I watch it on TV and they're like, I would have never known that was a girl or guy. Well, how could you ever have known that unless they told you? Folks will, they want to be encouraging and they want to be affirming, but you don't just say that to people that you know are cisgender. When someone comes out as trans and you're like, you look so real. Well, they are real. It's such a weird response. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm trans. Then I'm now on display to be asked whatever questions people want. I think that's also strange and really uncomfortable. Don't ask people, are you a real gender? Anytime you ask someone a question with, are you a real? Yes, I'm a real human being. Have you had the surgery? Are you gonna get surgery? Someone disclosing that to you and letting you know right off the bat, that's different. You asking questions about people's bodies is not okay. Offering unsolicited advice, you should do your hair this way, or you should maybe act this way, or when people think I'm a guy and they're like, oh, you're a trans guy, I'm like, you have to explain non-binary all over again. And then they'll say, well, you should just act a little bit more tough. And I'm like, what? She want me to throw chairs through windows? Will that make you be more of a guy? Are you legally this gender. It puts so much power in these systems that aren't really created to include trans people that now our legitimacy is based on whether a court decides that, or a therapist or a doctor, when like we're masters of our own identities, right? Like that's everybody. A lot of times we'll hear people say that equate transgender people to being gay, so like not even understanding the difference between sexuality and gender identity. If you're a trans woman, that means you're a sex worker, or which is not true for everybody. If you come out as trans, that means you're automatically going from one end of the spectrum to the other. That's also not true for everybody. There are people who identify as non-binary. The whole non-binary identity is completely not even included. There's also stereotypes that trans folks immediately or automatically have had surgery or want surgery. There are people who identify as trans men who don't want to have surgery, who don't want to be on hormones. We have the bathroom issue coming up, and when trans folks just want to use the bathroom in safety, but then there's folks that are saying like trans people are pedophiles, or you know, they're in it for some other reason rather than going to the bathroom, which is another really negative and harmful stereotype. There's also I think stereotypes or misunderstandings around trans folks like being confused or going through phases. Gender is fluid, like there's a fluidity between maybe some folks want to identify this way and then they don't, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that it's not real or not true. Some things transgender people face are being respected for who they are, being taken seriously, access to basic like survival needs, stuff like housing, employment. Even though California has incredible non-discrimination laws, we're still seeing trans folks being discriminated against, not hired because they're transgender. We see this oppression across like the board in any state that you're in. It's harder to access legal name and gender document change because you have to pay $435 for it. Anything that will affirm your gender identity, you have to invest money in. And so if they're not hiring you and you don't have a home and it's hard to eat, how are you going to afford to buy the things that you need that is going to affirm your gender identity? We haven't even hit surgeries and hormones and access to basic health care. So for some people, like they need to wear makeup and they have to wear certain clothing in order to be safe. And if they don't have access to that, then they experience violence. The names that are even here, these are names of transgender women who've been murdered. It becomes this like downward spiral because it's all connected. Trans folks experience a lot. Even taking public transportation and someone feels that they have the right to call you out and say like, you know, what are you a man or a woman or what are you? I don't know how many times I get called it, being a trans person of color. It immediately becomes a dehumanizing experience. Actually, I had this happen last week where someone was like, what is it? What is it? And I was like, it's like, when people get flustered using he, she, they pronouns, and I'll hear oftentimes like, I don't know, he, she, they, it. And that happens way more often than I think other folks are even aware of. Trans folks having to navigate, like, who can we come out to? Like, I'm gonna enter this space, can I wear this? Can I like speak in this way? Do I have to raise my voice up or lower? Or, you know, it's like a constant navigation. Every environment you walk into, I have to immediately say like, okay, how am I gonna, you know, how am I gonna be read, and then how am I gonna engage with folks? So imagine going through that all day long and then coming home and then not having a supportive family, and there's never a break. Like, trans folks never have a break. That's why we see like a lot of mental health issues. This isn't because trans people are confused, it's because the rest of the world's confused. We know what's up, like we know what we need, and we know who we are. It's the rest of society that doesn't, and we end up having to bear that burden. You can make spaces more trans-friendly. One, if like folks educate themselves and don't rely on the one trans person in the room to be the bearer, like to have to now take on the educator's cap and tell everybody about these identities. We have like knowledge at our fingertips, right? Like we can go online and we can look this stuff up. So kind of take your own responsibility in doing that. So when you say you're having like a women's space, is this included, are trans women included in this? Because they're women. Like, are there bathrooms that are accessible to non-binary, to trans folks, to families, to folks with different abilities, right? Like how are your spaces accessible, not just to trans people, people with different needs? Like being intentional about breaking down stigmas. So we want to make sure that we're building our spaces accessible to everybody, and that will by default make it accessible to trans people. Our identities aren't just like, I'm not just a transgender person walking around, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual assault. I'm a trans person who's also Asian, who, you know, is queer, who has gotten a degree, like mental health stuff that I'm dealing with. All those things make me who I am.
Part 3. Next, we are going to talk about sexual and romantic orientations. First off, there's a big difference between sexual and romantic orientations. A sexual orientation is how someone feels sexually about other people, and a romantic orientation is how people feel romantically about other people. Sexual and romantic orientations are determined by attraction. Sexual and romantic orientations do not have to match. Some people can be heterosexual and panromantic or asexual and homoromantic. Here are some prefixes you should know. Hetero, attracted to the opposite gender. A person who is a woman that is attracted to men is hetero. A man that is attracted to women is also hetero. Another word for hetero is straight. Homo, attracted to the same gender. Most people who are homo refers to themselves as gay. A man who is attracted to men is gay. A woman who is attracted to women is gay. A lot of women who like women refer to themselves as lesbian. This is Mariana. She is 27 years old and is a lesbian. She says her romantic orientation is more pan, and she has a more masculine gender expression. About her labels, she says, "They're a way to understand ourselves, how we aren't always structured by how we look, how we say it, and how we answer to it. It's a lot more fluid, and it means something distinct in each person. But I do believe that they help us understand. It's a form to communicate, to find each other, to find things in common with each other." I asked Mariana what some stereotypes of lesbians there were. There's stereotypes that there's something wrong with us, we're violent, that we're all masculine, that we want to be men. That's not true. There's a stereotype that we are lesbian because of an absence of men and a male figure in our lives, and that's what makes our identity. A lot of people think that we are masculine, we dress masculine, where that isn't always true. There's stereotypes that we have cats, sometimes that is true, but not all lesbians have cats. There's stereotypes that seem minor, but when there's a lesbian and they don't fit in the stereotypes that are said, they feel very isolated from their role, and that role is a place of safety that we build. So that's why it's important to break these stereotypes. One thing that I forgot to say is that in a lesbian couple, a stereotype is that one has a masculine expression and another has a feminine expression in a mimicry of the heterosexual relationship. It's not like that. There are all types, sizes, colors, and flavors of lesbians together. We have to keep in mind that one of the primary ways that lesbians are discriminated against is in the home, which happens a lot in other LGBT community identities. The system of the home is where we were first kicked out. These people tried to kick us out of a bus. They said, how could we be together, kiss each other in that way with children present? We reacted by saying there was nothing wrong with what we were doing, and there were some people who supported us. I was discriminated against twice and almost kicked out of the bus once, and the subway once, because people think they can invalidate what we're doing and tell us what places we can exist or not exist. She thinks there's a lot of things that need to be changed in our society. We need to break a lot of prejudices, stereotypes. I believe there needs to be more liberty for everyone so that we can live without having to have labels that are defined by society. I was talking with my friends and we realized it is very hard to destroy the societal way we are categorized as women, men, lesbian, bisexual, transsexuals. It is my dream to create so many labels that we overcome meanings and self-define our label, lose its meaning to society, and have much more liberty, equality, and rights for everyone. We can build ourselves up and define ourselves, identify how we want to, and then we'll be happier. Homo, hetero, flexible. has an attracted preference, but there are room for exceptions. A man who is heteroflexible is attracted to women, although there have been some exceptions where they have been attracted to a man. Or a woman who is homoflexible is attracted to women, although there have been rare occasions where they have been attracted to a man. Bi, attracted to two or more genders. A person who is bi is attracted to women and men. Many people who are bi are attracted to women, men, and also non-binary people. Pan, attracted to all genders. A person who is pan is attracted to all genders. This is very similar to bi. Some people like to use the prefix bi instead because it is more well known. This is Juan Pablo. He is 37 years old and uses the labels bisexual and pansexual interchangeably. My gender expression is very similar to that of cis men, and a lot of times I'll wear makeup and nail polish, which has a lot to do with my musical tastes, and culturally that affects me. I listen to metal, and there are other influences that I wear makeup for. About his label, he says, "For me, my labels mean to me that I can write in a few words the most important parts of my identity. They're like steps which add up to others, my political, relationship, family, cultural identities that form me and who I am today. It's really important to me because it took a lot of time. Today, they are part of my story and my personal struggle." About stereotypes, he says, "The stereotypes of bisexuals is that bisexuals are confused. They experience stereotypes from both the heterosexual community and the LGBT community. They believe that we are promiscuous, that we like sex a lot and that's why we're bisexual, that we want to have multiple partners, that they always need to be with a person, whether they be a man or a woman. Another stereotype is that we are people in the process of figuring out whether we are gay or lesbian, like it's a transition between being heterosexual and lesbian or gay." In terms of discrimination, he hasn't faced any violence, but he has had other struggles. "My family partly hasn't been accepting. They've distanced themselves. They don't approve that I'm bisexual, nor my expression, and not even the things I do to be visible. They are very against me using my person, my life for visibility, and they don't talk to me about it. And the LGBT community, when I would talk to a gay man, and when I told him I was bisexual, he would discard me. For the women, they think I'm not pure in some way, and it happens with some girls who were bisexual. They thought I would leave them and our relationship would end. I came out of the closet in my 30s. Before then, I lived as a heterosexual man, so I didn't suffer from discrimination in school." I asked him what he hopes for the future. "Part of what we do in the space of history is build a different society, a diverse society that respects diversity in terms of culture and religion and sexual orientation and gender identity. To understand that people are people and we can be something today and something different tomorrow, and it's not bad. We need a world that is more equal and just." A. Not attracted to any gender. A person who is asexual usually calls themselves ace, and a person who is aromantic calls themselves aro. An asexual person does not experience sexual attraction, and an aromantic person does not experience romantic attraction. Both ace and aro people can have partners and intimate relationships. Meet Dan. He's 17. He's asexual, which to him means,
"I don't particularly like or care for sex, even though I do have the hormones and thoughts of, your average teenager."
He says he doesn't care to pursue those things. Romantically, he considers himself pan.
To love someone might not be in any sexual attraction. It might just be that your personalities really click, and you can't really do anything if they just happen to be one gender or other gender identity.
Here he describes the times when he can't come out.
And I'm in a room with a bunch of people, and they're talking about, sexual stuff, and while it bothers me, I can't really feel like I can just go out and say, "You guys are weird. This is making me uncomfortable." I just feel that I'm a little too vulnerable, and most of the time when I'm there, I just stay silent and just hope the conversation doesn't come to me, and I don't want to say anything.
Online, he tells people,
They could send pictures to me, and I wouldn't want any pictures to be sexual, so I just tell them right off the bat I'm not into that, and please don't act too crazy around me because it makes me feel uncomfortable. And they usually listen. It's really nice.
I asked him to give advice on how others can find their identity.
Honestly, it's just what you feel. It's not really about, what's trending. It's what's speaks to you. When I started researching it, I heard all these different orientations, and it was a little much for me, to be honest, but it has to speak to you, and don't try and like fake yourself out that you're one thing when you're not.
Gray, low levels of attraction. A person who is gray ace or gray arrow usually doesn't experience attraction, although there are exceptions where they do. You may think that some of these words describe basically the same identity. However, there are slight differences in all these words that make a world of difference for people when it comes to their identity, and it is important to respect that. Then again, some people might not focus on all the differences and use these labels interchangeably. It all depends on the person. Also, what these labels mean to people may differ. For example, being bi for one person might mean something different than being bi for another person. Maybe bi person A can be attracted to people from any gender, but is more frequently attracted to women. And bi person B is only attracted to men and women. The science behind it all. I would like to share some science with you. It should be noted that this science excludes non-binary gender identities and non-binary orientations such as bi, pan, and many others. The reason? Science is run by money. If someone puts money into a study, then it happens. If there's no money, then it doesn't happen. While this is extremely problematic, this issue is for another video. All the information is from the book, This Book is Gay. We will start with epigenetics. In the book, it says, on some of our genes, we have epimarks. These are sort of like post-it notes with added information for the gene's job. On the male chromosomes, it may have, yo, you should like girls, written on it, while the female chromosomes may come with a note saying, you definitely want to have sex with dudes. Now, for a long time, it was assumed that these post-it notes were removed before being passed via sweaty parent sex, sorry, couldn't resist, to their baby. But now scientists believe that this isn't always the case, and that sometimes these post-it notes saying whom you're meant to fancy get stuck onto the kids. So in short, boys can get the epi mark for liking boys from their moms, and girls can get the epi mark for liking girls from their dads. This documentary was the basic information about the LGBT plus community. If you want to learn even more, I would strongly suggest reading Ash Hardell's, formerly known as Ashley Mardell, book, ABCs of LGBT. It's truly an encyclopedia of the queer community. If you want to read it for free online, you can find it under the title of Gay BCs of LGBT. If you're really not into reading and want to know more, you can visit their YouTube channel, Ash Hardell. I would like to give a big thank you to Ash Hardell for allowing me to use your video footage, for being an inspiration behind this documentary, and for your visibility and education work about the LGBT plus community via YouTube. I have been following your channel for years, and every new video just gets better. It has been amazing to see your journey. I cannot thank you enough for being such a good role model for me and so many others.